So, how do you pick the right programming language or the right tech stack for your project? So, how do you know what programming language to pick for each possible situation? There are some key points you need to consider before you can come to a conclusion, and those will be different for everyone. We will now decide what programming language or languages to choose based on our movie recommendation app. So, what are the criteria or factors? I have created a simple diagram here to show in this example what are the things we would be needing for this project and how we could pick a programming language based on that. So let's list the factors first. Those are environment and execution, type of application, community and resources, demand and industry. So what do they mean? Environment and execution means how easy or hard it is to run that particular program, on what platforms does it run, what images are needed do we need some registration, do we need some interpreters, and so on and so on. The next thing you need to consider is the type of application you are going to build. For example, if you compare Python and Node, Python is awesome for calculating some complex tasks, especially in the machine learning area. But for handling a lot of results on a web server, it's definitely not the best option. If you want to handle 10,000 users concurrently, you would rather use something like Node.js than Python. But for machine learning purposes, you would definitely rather use Python. So this is the second factor. The third factor is community and resources. How much documentation, how many forums, how many questions and answers are there for a particular programming language? How much can you find online? And the fourth thing is demand and industry. What are the current trends? How popular is a language becoming? As you can see, Python is currently the most popular language, followed by Java, JavaScript, C#. You need to follow those trends, but don't overdo it. You need to keep a healthy combination of all those four key factors we have just mentioned. For those who want to go deeper and learn how to become a top-tier software engineer or start your own software startup, head over to noveltechmedia.com. The course is being constantly updated and expanded. I will always try to answer all the comments right here on YouTube, but if you have more questions or are stuck or need some support, head over to noveltechmedia.com and sign up. Now let's look back at our movie recommender. What language would perform best for what task? We want to run the app in the cloud, particularly AWS. So we need to see what languages are supported on AWS in the first place, on what different services, and what is actually something we could be running there. So in order to answer that question, AWS, for example, offers Lambda services, which are already pre-made indefinitely scalable servers on which you can run code for, I think, Python, Java, Node, PHP, and I think C#. So pretty much all the major languages are covered. But we are going to create, in this case, our own servers on which we are going to deploy a Linux, and on Linux we are going to install our languages. So this shouldn't actually be a problem. The environment and execution is not the problem there. But still, I find it much easier to set up Python and Node.js than, for example, to set up Java. The next thing we need to do is look at this chart and define how are people interacting with our software. So you should always have one entry point or multiple entry points, but there should definitely be an entry point. People shouldn't be directly communicating with your backend API. So our entry point is going to be an Nginx server on which we are going to run a Node.js API, which then will interact with our different REST APIs here on the backend. So on the backend, we are going to have a machine learning algorithm that is going to recommend our movies, and for that we are going to use Python, since Python is really prominent with this, for handling a lot of requests coming from here. We are going to use Node.js, since Node.js is really made for this task to handle a lot of simple requests. So how are we going to do that? All those requests are going to come to the Nginx server, and those are going to be simple requests, which then will just in return be propagated to our Python machine learning microservice. So we are going to have two services here. The first one is the movie recommender, and the second one would be the music recommender when we are going to implement this. So as you can see, this architecture is much more expandable, and it is much easier to implement new features and to change stuff on the way than to start with the approach of just building one server, one API, and pretty much making a mess out of it. This way we could also implement here some barriers, for example, stuff like caching, watching at where the traffic is coming from, maybe blocking some type of traffic, and so on. So it is much safer, and even if this server gets compromised, we still would need to go through those microservices here. And then in the backend, we are also going to have a shared database from which all the services will be interacting. For this, we will be using DynamoDB on AWS. And the scalability and all that part is also handled for us on AWS, so we don't need to think about how we are going to share our database on different servers and so on. It's also important that you don't get stuck with one particular programming languages. If you learn one, it is going to be much easier to learn different ones after that. For example, I started with C++, which was a mistake. C++ is a pretty hard language to learn, and after doing this, pretty much everything else was much simpler. But it wasn't really particular if you're learning pointers in C++ and never gonna use them in JavaScript. So you should start with some language, for example JavaScript, learn your way up there and adapt to new languages. For example, if you start with Node and Python, you're going to cover most practices and most programming principles across the board, and then it won't be hard for you to jump to, for example, Java after that, or C# or even go into something really deep like C++. If you want to build a career in software development or start your own business, head over to noveltechmedia.com to learn more about the entire process of building out an app and taking it to the market. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate each and every view. I hope you have a nice day, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next video.